Hello, true duelists, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Single Card History, the series where I talk about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and sometimes some of the ones that didn't. Today's card, the monster that everybody's heard of, the strongest normal monster in the game, and the icon of all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Really, Blue Eyes White Dragon. Now, usually it's at this point in the video that I go over the card and all of its rarities over the years, but Blue Eyes has had so many goddamn printings that it's easier to list off the years that it didn't get a reprint. Namely, that would be 2006, 2007, and 2011, in regards to the TCG. There are more than 50 unique printings of this card with 9 separate alternate arts. It's the card with the second most alternate arts in the game, beaten only, of course, by Dark Magician's 11. At this point, I'm really kind of just stalling to make sure that I've given myself enough time in the editing phase to put those 9 arts on screen at an appropriate amount of time for each of them. But starting with Legend of Blue Eyes and the Kaiba starter deck, this is one of the most reprinted cards that there is. And if you really want me to suffer and put together and read out all of the variations and printings and whatnot, call that a Patreon bonus video or something in the future. But moving on, not only has Blue Eyes never been on the ban list, it's never going to be, and I'm declaring that now. Yeah, that's right, brave takes only here on this channel. This is a level 8 light attribute dragon with 3000 attack and 2500 defense. And more than that, it's a powerful engine of destruction. Virtually invincible, very few have faced this awesome creature and lived to tell the tale. Or so they say. Blue Eyes is the strongest normal monster in all of the game, a fact that has remained true throughout the 25 years of this game's history. And while that's more of a neat fact in the modern day, in the earliest duels in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! That was something that was notable. I don't have an abundance of information about formats of the earliest times in this game. I know that, Summon Skull Beatdown was the generally conceived best deck in the earliest of days, offering the most attack for the least amount of investment. But if you did choose to invest into summoning out Blue Eyes, you had the strongest monster outside of equip spells and field spells if you were that type of player. This fact, coupled with the fact that it's Blue Eyes, was enough to get some people playing it, and most effectively it would be partnered with Lord of D and the Flute of Summoning Dragons. Flute of Summoning Dragons is the iconic card from the anime that can special summon up to 2 dragon monsters from your hand if you control Lord of D. This strategy wasn't as consistent as good old-fashioned Summon Skull Beatdown per se, seeing as you need 4 cards in your hand to get the most out of it, but it wasn't without its strengths. For starters, it's possible to open up Lord, Flute, and a single copy of Blue Eyes and then summon out that 1 Blue Eyes on your first turn, since Flutes can summon up to 2, not only 2. Secondly, it can summon any dragon monster, including Curse of Dragon or Trihorn Dragon as alternative beaters to get your Flute more live more often. And let's be real, if you did open the nuts and get yourself Lord of D, Flute, and 2 Blue Eyes, you've got like the strongest board conceivable going first. There's also the fact that special summoning the monsters off of Flute of the Summoning Dragon would allow you to bypass the then relevant Trap Hole, since Trap Hole can only stop normal summons, and really you're just kinda hoping that the opponent can't out Blue Eyes once you've gotten it onto the field, outside of say Man-Eater Bug, which does target, and if you still got Lord of D on the field, you got there's something here. I'm not saying it's great, but there's something here. The deck does of course have issues. Dark Hole, Raigeki, Wall of Illusion, and simply bricking can all come together to ruin your day, but you won't be scared of losing your Blue Eyes to Trap Hole. And Unga Bunga Biganumba is a style of Yu-Gi-Oh! That is enjoyed even to this day. This deck does not last long, however relevant it was or wasn't back in the day, quickly being outpaced by honestly even like the release of like Labyrinth of Nightmare, the 5th set in the game. Again, I don't know this like objectively and provably, but once the game got to more powerful cards, the bricks became much and more unforgiving as time went on. And by the time Labyrinth of Nightmare drops, you're looking at cards like Magician of Faith, the hand rip spell cards, and even something like United We Stand to make any monster have the potential to out the mighty dragon. After this point, Blue Eyes doesn't so much fall off from the meta so much as it does fucking die. There's a handful of support cards that it receives over the next couple of years. Things like Kaiba Man to summon it out from the hand, or White Stone of Legend to search it from the deck, and even Burst Stream of Destruction to serve as your own little Raigeki of sorts if you control Blue Eyes. But these are all more so one-off cards that can work together as opposed to a coherent single strategy. And for that reason, you don't really see Blue Eyes topping in the competitive scene at all right up until 2013. Because that's when they got the Saga of the Blue Eyes White Dragon structure deck released in late that year, namely September. Because that structure deck would give us a key card that would make summoning Blue Eyes from the deck much more viable, and that was Maiden with the Eyes of Blue, a level 1 spellcaster that could summon a Blue Eyes from the hand, deck, or grave if it was targeted for an attack or with a card effect. Having to wait for your opponent to attack it was rarely the way that Blue Eyes was summoned, and if that was what you were going for, it was more so you summoned Maiden and then used it as a deterrence from being attacked, more than getting out your Blue Eyes. Instead, there was a deck that rose to some notoriety in this time from the aftermath of the September 2013 ban list to get out Blue Eyes by targeting it with your own spells, and that would be Spellbook. Because Spellbook Blue Eyes was a thing that briefly gained some notoriety for the simple fact that somebody was playing Blue Eyes in an actual deck. Now, there were things you could do, such as Wonder Wanding your own Maiden outside of Spellbook decks, and Blue Eyes did show up at a local scene in abundance. People just love Blue Eyes, but in regards to the competitive game, this Spellbook list was among the first. It wasn't the most popular or even the most effective variant, but it's playing fucking Blue Eyes, so people took note. Blue Eyes was able to offer some things to Spellbook decks in terms of pure damage, simply being a 3k beater, as well as the package giving the deck access to a tuner to make those sorts of plays with. If you were to synchro Maiden with, say, your Blue Eyes, you could get Azure Eyes Silver Dragon, which could revive Blue Eyes from the graveyard in the following turn to get you more damage. And if you wanted to use High Priestess of Prophecy, you could also use it with the level 1 tuners to make Synchro 8 plays, which wasn't irrelevant because Crimson Blader is a card, and the Dragon Ruler matchup was very much prominent. And for the truly enlightened, once the card released, if you were to be playing Spellbook Blue Eyes, you could use Maiden and Blue Eyes and a Blue Boy to get Star Reader. I don't think that's especially notable, but I saw one person talking about how crazy it was that you could summon Star Reader, and they were so fixated on it. I felt the need to include it in this video. It being a spellcaster in regards to Maiden also did have some synergies with the deck, namely turning on the field spells effect to get you a bonus draw, and you could target it with things like Wisdom or Power to again cheat out Blue Eyes from the deck. This is all in the September 2013 format, which was after the ban list, so this was really just one of the ways people tried to replace Judgment from the deck, and Jowgen by proxy of Judgment not being in the deck, but it never really took off in the way that players liked. Meanwhile, Blue Eyes did find a home in the rival of Spellbook, and that was in Dragon Rulers. Like Spellbook, Blue Eyes did begin to see some play in the September 2013 format after the banning of, well, so many things. Blue Eyes had much more natural synergy with Dragon Rulers due to it being a dragon type, and that making it fodder for summoning of those oh-so-abundant rulers. It also paired well with the White Stone of Legend in this deck as opposed to Maiden, with ruler decks opting to make the most out of the different level 1 tuner that served as Blue Eye support. If the White Stone is sent to the grave, it can search out any copy of Blue Eyes from your deck, whether it's sent from the hand or the deck or the field to the grave, which meant that Stone in the graveyard was access to 2 dragons or 1 additional summon of a Dragon Ruler. White Stone also made a great target for cards of consonance, with the deck picking up a number of low attack dragon tuners to make various synchro plays with, such as Flamvell Guard and Dragunity Korseska. This is probably the first big look at Blue Eyes as a draw engine in the competitive scene, with some builds opting to play trade-in as well as cards of consonance to get the most out of all those Blue Eyes and eggs in your hands. This deck would use Blue Eyes for these 2 things more than anything else: draw fodder and ruler fodder, as opposed to actually trying to meaningfully summon it out, although attributing some Dracosac tokens to normal summon Blue Eyes for damage was definitely a flex factor. This would go into what would become Mythic Rulers, using the Dragon Rulers, the then new Mythic Earth and Water Dragons from Shadow Specters, and often a Blue Eyes draw engine to make its boards. The Rulers were obviously great as free summons and beaters to get access to your extra deck, and the Mythic Dragons were searchable off the Rulers, namely Redox and Tidal. All of this could be easy for trade-in fodder as well, or at least the level 8 water Mythic Dragon, and it's still just great fodder for ruler summons no matter where they end up. This was something that only got better with the release of a card called Soul Charge, a card that was damn near perfect for every deck, but Mythic Rulers especially could get a whole hell of a lot out of a Soul Charge. After cycling through all those Blue Eyes and White Stones of Legend to, deep draw into your deck, you can then Soul Charge all those monsters back for a Synchro 9 for an Azure play to protect all your dragons, and just for generic rank 8 plays in general. This remained a very strong and very popular deck for the entirety of the time it was legal, from what I can remember, and while I never really remember it being the definitive best deck of any format it was in, it was definitely one you had to be mindful of when going into events. This stayed the home of Blue Eyes up until the banning of the Dragon Rulers in April 2015, and with that, Blue Eyes falls out of the metagame for quite some time. I can mention that this lone Blue Eyes Shaddoll deck did top in 2014 in this kind of pocket of irrelevance once Duelist Alliance hit the scene, because Shaddoll really just needs any light engine to get access to Construct, of course. And one player decided that the trade-in draw engine was a nice way to get Blue Eyes and hope to just skill draw into your Shaddoll fusions, I guess. You can also, of course, send the White Stone of Legend with Shaddoll Fusion to summon out Construct, and from there you can search Blue Eyes to keep trade-ins live, so there is some actual synergy here, just provided you actually have that trade in your hand and don't just have to end up using that Blue Eyes as yet another light fusion material. Although I won't pretend that that's the worst thing in the world. Lord knows stick and chair variants of dolls were popular at one time too. And if you did manage to summon out that Blue Eyes, maybe through Soul Charge or something, it and Construct could be rank 8 material to help you build or break boards with cards like Divine Dragon Knight Felgrand, or I'll say the Sylvan High Protector, depending on whether you were going first or second. This deck's pretty cute, but it was not a common strategy for doll decks and is more just a showing of, yeah, somebody did this at least once, so that's that. Things would change for the big blue boy soon enough, however, with Blue Eyes receiving support in both Shining Victories in May of 2016, and notably Blue Eyes Alternative Dragon specifically in the Dark Side of Dimension movie pack in July of the same year. There were an abundance of cards to make Blue Eyes into an actual core strategy that, believe it or not, was far more successful than anyone could have predicted. Among the cards to bring Blue Eyes into the new light were things like the White Stone of Ancients, one that could summon a Blue Eyes monster from your deck during the end phase if it was in your graveyard, Sage with the Eyes of Blue, a new normal summon for the deck that could add any level 1 light tuner from your deck to your hand, including Veiler, as well as having a card effect to discard itself and target a card on your field and send that card to the graveyard to summon out a Blue Eyes from your deck. This had obvious synergy with Maiden, however Maiden had already been power crept at this point in time. Maiden was also probably power crept in 2013, but shut up, that spellbook deck was real, goddammit. Obviously, this was great to get cards into your hand to use with Cards of Consonance and trade-in, as Blue Eyes always could, and then there were the actual new big beater monsters. Something like Dragon Spirit of White being a way for the deck to remove Spell and Trap, and just be a monster to summon off White Stone of Ancients. Blue Eyes Alternative, which could reveal a Blue Eyes in your hand and summon itself out for a free 3k beater that did have a effect to target and destroy an opponent's monster if you wanted to, and most notably of all, a new level 9 Synchro boss monster in Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. This monster had an effect to negate card effects in the graveyard, could prevent the summon of monsters if that summon included 2 or more monsters at the same time, and could tag itself out into a Synchro Dragon to avoid removal and get access to other powerful Synchros. Spirit Dragon here has been accurately referred to as a pushed card, one that was very much built around the meta it was released into, as both of those effects were very good against the popular other meta decks at the time. Things like Pendulum decks and Metal Foe couldn't Pendulum summon while you had it on the field, and if you were still playing PK Fire or a Burning Abyss variant, which very many people were, you could use the effect to negate those Burning Abyss monster effects, which was oh so crucial. All of this, coupled with things that have been slowly released over the years. Most recently then, such as Melody of the Awakening Dragon, which could discard a card to add 2 copies of any Blue Eyes monster functionally from the deck to the hand, or at least the Blue Eyes ones that you wanted in your hand, and the tried and true trade-in Cards of Consonance and Soul Charge catapulted Blue Eyes into the meta. Not just playable, meta. Some players opted to play this deck pure, going all in on the Shining Victories cards and making boards of Spirit Dragon and some rank 8 Xyz. And one very popular variant would include Galaxy Soldier as well, due to the fact that the entire deck is light, and using Galaxy Soldier would let you summon out a copy of Cyber Dragon Infinity as an extra negate as a nice little bonus to the rest of your board. Blue Eyes became a staple of the metagame, to the shock of most players, considering up until this point it had been best known as like a draw engine in Mythic Rulers, or a rank 8 engine with Soul Charge in Mythic Rulers. While it was most definitely meta, it still had all the lovely traits that decks running high-level monsters so often do, namely bricking. It would earn itself the name Brick Eyes for this fact, and really there's no better way that exemplifies the truth of that statement than what would be the World Championship Finals of 2016. Because Blue Eyes wasn't simply meta, it was the only meta in regards to the World's Finals of that year. World's format uses what I like to call a MUT list. It combines the OCG and the TCG's unique ban lists so that each card is played at the highest spot on either ban list. And by higher, I mean the most banned. Lower spot maybe makes more sense. Really what I'm getting to is if a card is unlimited in one region but banned in another, then the card will be banned in Worlds format. Similarly, if it's semi-limited in one region but limited in another region, then it's limited in Worlds format. It can be played with the lowest number that either region has available. And because of the MUT list having hit Burning Abyss and Metal Foes deck far more significantly between the two regions than in either individual one, Blue Eyes was the lone deck that was pretty well untouched for that Worlds format, leading to the finals of 2016 being a Blue Eyes mirror match. And just to really give the player base undeniable proof that Blue Eyes was in fact Brick Eyes, Worlds finalist Eric Christensen wound up bricking twice in a row. And I'm not bricked, I mean bricked. In some of the worst luck imaginable, he literally just couldn't do anything for 2 games in a row and was unable to put up a fight in the World Championship Finals. And just to really illustrate that point, I remember watching that World Finals live with some of my friends and us telling our other friend to come over. Yeah, Worlds is on, we're gonna watch the finals, dude, get over here. And he's like, yeah, okay. And he got to our, location, he got to the house in 15 minutes. From text to arrival, 15 minutes difference, he was too late. Worlds was done, the finals was over, and the time it took him to drive, it was done. The entirety of the match is like 13 minutes, and it's just hard to watch. It was possibly the most boring Worlds finals ever, maybe, which sucks for Blue Eyes fans, I guess, but and all because of MUT format and, Spirit Dragon being a floodgate really making it possible. While this variant, running, mostly pure and sometimes a Galaxy variant, was by far the most successful meta version of the deck, it wasn't really the only version of Blue Eyes that was running around at this time. Because partnered at the hip to that meta version of the deck was, of course, the one and only Chaos Max version. Released in the same set that gave us Alternative, Chaos Max is a ritual version of Blue Eyes, a 4,000 attack, untargetable, and indestructible by card effect beater that will inflict double battle damage if it pierces, which in layman terms means that if Chaos Max attacks a 0 defense monster, it will deal 8,000 damage and win the game immediately. Just go for that easy game. Easy. It's also like the most Yugi Boomer version of Blue Eyes that exists for people to play. And fair enough, man, it kind of just strikes all the right notes, It's huge, it does real big damage, they love their OTKs, it's untargetable and indestructible, so it's difficult to get rid of in some instances, and of course, it's Blue Eyes, so it's just the perfect card for a number of old heads, let's call them. Unfortunately, and this really applies to Blue Eyes at large, the majority of the support came in the same set as Crystal Wing, a new synchro monster negate, which was just a pain in the ass, as I learned personally when playing my friend's Dragunity deck, because Crystal Wing kind of just shits on Blue Eyes decks in a lot of ways. It's a monster negate, and if it attacks a level 5 or higher monster, it gains the attack of whatever's battling it, so Crystal Wing can clear Chaos Max in battle, which does suck. Doesn't deter people from playing it, but I personally want those hours back, Adam, you dick. Playing good cards when I'm playing trash, what the hell's wrong with you? I'm a Blue Eyes player, damn it. Either way, this version, the Blue Eyes Chaos Max variant, it was not the tippy-top bestest of the meta, because I know this is going to be hard to believe, but adding a ritual monster to a deck already known for bricking was not the key to success at the tippy top YCS levels. Who'd have known? Because of this, the variant I mentioned earlier was the main focus of Blue Eyes, and as long as it was meta, which wasn't really all that much longer. The release of things like the ABC Structure Deck and Paleozoic Traps and Dimensional Barrier gave rise to a new, much faster metagame, and Blue Eyes' unreliability in the consistency department would see it fall from the top tables without even really need to be hit on the ban list. And being real, Blue Eyes has not seen the same level of success ever since. Some people have tried. There are things like an Invoked variant, which is just a Blue Eyes deck and you throw in an Invoked package, because it's just not like there's that many normal summons in Blue Eyes. And if nothing else, a Macabre to accompany your spirit is hardly a bad thing. Plus, since Blue Eyes is known for playing a fairly even distribution of monsters and spells, it's not unreliable to have a spell negate on top of your potential monster negates or graveyard negates or whatever. And really notably, a monster negate on your own turn for Ash Blossom, because that's another thing that really shot Blue Eyes in the back. Because let me tell you, Blue Eyes is a deck that got hit hard by the existence of Ash Blossom. All the things Blue Eyes love to try and up its consistency, its trade-ins, its cards of consonances, its Melody of the Awakening Dragons, are all cards that will send another card to the graveyard in the hopes to get 2 more. And Ash Blossom will prevent you from getting 2 more, so instead of going even on your advantage, you're going like -2. And it's so brutal for, again, brick eyes sometimes. It's Ash stopped this deck from being a thing more than anything, my god. What else have we got? Do you know someone tried a Zoodiac variant? Yeah, there's a topping list. I don't even know how or why, or even if truly. There's video. I can't be certain, but this exists on some level, whether it was our world or another. How much analysis do you need? Like, I can see what they're doing. I can see what the idea is. You can use Brilliant Fusion to dump Whitestone of Legend to search out Blue Eyes, as always, which gets you, your trade-in fodder, and you've got protection from the Trident pop that defined a large part of the Zoodiac meta if you play the Return of the Dragon Lord's Revival spell, so like that's something. And all that coupled with a 3k beater to punch over Zoodiac monsters, because Zoodiac monsters are not exceedingly beefy in the overwhelming majority of situations. I don't know what this individual, I don't really know what this individual was cooking when they did this, but it got to top 8, so that's nothing. I mean, it's top 8 at a regional, it's not nothing, okay? It's crazy. Blue Eyes' last hurrah in the grand scheme of things, though, would ultimately come early in the Link era, when a number of the cards that were still broken with Link summoning had yet to be banned, and namely the one and only Level Eater. Level Eater and Linkuriboh made for a very easy Link spam, and when coupled with Blue Eyes, you had 3 or 4 free summons off Level Eater, plus with the Linkuribohs, and then if you can get another one out, it's a lot of spam. It's a very easy way to Link climb, because every dragon could get you 4 more monsters once you get Level Eater into the grave. Now, this was in the early days of Link Monster, so this didn't mean something like a big negate board a la Appaloosa, and it was more so at the point where you could just get out your Firewall and then use its spamming to help build your board endlessly. The end game was to end on a Tri-Gate Wizard, or maybe 2 of them for some negates, and really just U-Link the opponent out of the game, because this was in Master Rule 4. And then, you could maybe loop the Firewall bounces in the right way, and if you end with 2 level 8s on board, you can overlay for Titanic Galaxy as well, just to prevent them from playing spells or extra deck monsters. The deck was as good as it was building boards as it was wasting time, I think is the point I'm getting to. This is ultimately a build that would die off before it could really take off, however, with Linkuriboh being released first as a Shonen Jump promo and just 2 months before Level Eater would be banned, and in the midst of the Spiral format, after their first slap on the wrist, so everyone was still kind of focused on Spiral and also the Droll Reincarnation lock as far as I can tell. So it's a tough sell in a format where you could just play Spiral and not deal with the bricking aspect of Blue Eyes, so it did have to contend with that. It did also die almost immediately into the format, so there's really not a ton that can be said on it beyond speculation. There's, of course, the lone Dragon Link player that tried to play it, because of course someone tried that. I mean, you can throw it in. Melody of the Awakening Dragon isn't a bad thing to search out, say, Chaos Dragon Levianeer, so you can also, if you already opened Levianeer, get Blue Eyes an alternative for a free 3k beater for that combo, Melody into alternative. It's some cope to me, but hey, a branded deck teched in a micro Blue Eyes engine at one point to get access to Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon, a fusion monster for Blue Eyes that can attack all monsters the opponent controls once each, as well as set a trap card from your graveyard onto your field if it battled, which could be useful to set like Skill Drain to floodgate the opponent if you wanted. Look, there's lists of all sorts of one-ups in regard to this game, just throwing into Blue Eyes. If you want to look at where Blue Eyes is in the game, you can take a look at this chart broadly. That huge spike was in 2016 when it, was viable at Worlds. The straggling bumps that follow, that's everything else. Blue Eyes as a standalone deck hasn't been a thing to worry about in 8 years as I'm making this video. That's, it's just not a thing in the meta. It's bricky, it's very weak to hand traps, it's not the easiest thing to spam with compared to things that could spam more, and really, if it were more viable in Dragon Link decks, it would be a Dragon Link decks, but there are simply better dragons to swarm the board with. But it does have a fourth trait to it beyond those negative ones that's far more important than all of them. It's popular. It's the Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster. You can literally be this guy at your locals, and it's you can be that guy. I don't recommend being that guy. That's not the wisest way to go in my taste, but hey, you can be that guy. You can even make a video about it, going way too far into depth about what it's done, and wear a Blue Eyes sweater that you own. All these straggler decks post 2016, you can look into the comments of any deck profile and you'll see a bunch of people really happy and excited that the player used Blue Eyes. And if you're looking at one that topped at a regional event, you'll see the players often talk about it with a sense of pride, that they topped with Blue Eyes. Like I've said, it's the dragon of Yu-Gi-Oh! And as a fan of dragons in Yu-Gi-Oh!, that is saying something, because this game has a lot of fucking dragons. Blue Eyes set the standard for anime rival monsters in regards to its context in that. The majority of anime rival base monsters have all been dragons, and they almost all have that 3k attack, 2500 defense stat line. It's just that iconic. I don't really need to do a deep dive into what makes this card so popular among fans of Yu-Gi-Oh! You could probably just play like Kaiba's theme from the anime and people would be like, yup, me likey. It's the big badass dragon used by the cooler rival with the stronger cards, on top of that anime legacy of being the super rare one with only 3 copies in existence. Blue Eyes' popularity hasn't waned in all of the years, and even this deck list here is one that I've taken from a Team Samurai video, which has over 60,000 views. Which, for reference, that's like the same number of views a lot of YCS winning deck lists get. Yes, I'm using like the most popular monster and a profile from like the biggest YouTuber's channel to get my point here, but I think it still stands. People love Blue Eyes, and they love winning with their favorite boss monster. So they'll look up builds, and they'll get a Blue Eyes mate in Master Duel, and they'll see how far they can go with the deck, and they don't really care to play the grand game of Yu-Gi-Oh! They just want to play Blue Eyes. It's just a lovable and dear card to much of the fan base. It has as much Yu-Gi-Oh! As like, I don't know, Pyramids are, or Dark Magician. Overall, Blue Eyes is like Yu-Gi-Oh!'s Charizard. It's that original dragon that the company loves to push out, and it's in all the marketing, and for all the amount of people that complain about it, there's just as many people who absolutely love it and eat it up. It's had a hell of a unique history in the game, going from a irrelevant beater that just simply isn't worth getting out in the majority of circumstances, to a draw engine of sorts, to a world champion tier deck, to all of gold rating in Master Duel. It's one hell of a legacy. It's a popular ass card. It looks cool as shit, and I can't deny it, and there are people who simply love Blue Eyes White Dragon. And who knows, maybe the 83rd wave will be the one that really pushes it back into meta contention, because against all odds, Konami managed to turn a level 8 brick-ass vanilla monster into not just a playable one, but a beloved playable one. And that's a damn impressive feat, if you ask me. So that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Blue Eyes White Dragon. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. And don't forget, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because not only will you be impressing that smoking Italian wife, but you will immediately and contractually become a true duelist.